Resident Evil Requiem is a good game. I want to make that clear. I've had a great time playing it over the past few days, and I'd like to start this review with its strengths. Level design is generally very solid. The game is structured around two large areas that you can explore more or less in the order you want. One for Leon and one for Grace, plus a handful of linear levels between chapters. There are optional areas and plenty of secrets, so navigating the environment is very satisfying, and backtracking is usually possible if you want to explore more, since points of no return are generally very obvious. Leon's sections are pure Resident Evil 4 remake, complete with a weapon shop and upgrades. There's a wide variety of enemies and weapons, which adds a lot of replay value. The story falls into a few weak horror cliches early on, but overall, it does a very good job of tying up many narrative threads from basically each and every mainline entry in the series. This review contains no spoilers, but if you switch the language to Klingon past the second minute, you'll get access to a section with minor spoilers from the beginning of the game. I'd rather avoid potentially ruining the experience for anyone who wants to go in completely blind, which is why I've placed it there. My biggest issue has to do with Grace's sections. She only has a handgun and a magnum for her entire campaign, plus the occasional Molotov cocktail at best. Even Resident Evil had more weapon variety than that. Grace's sections are clearly designed in the style of the classic Resident Evil games. However, the gameplay feels extremely limited. In my opinion, having multiple weapons makes resource management more interesting. You have to plan what to carry, how much ammo, the usual stuff. And it adds variety to combat. And speaking of combat, it's fine that Grace doesn't have as much mechanical depth as Leon, but what I find inexcusable is that aside from bosses and mini-bosses, her sections only feature 3 enemy types, and one of them only appears in the final hour of the game. Not even the very first game had so few enemies. Another decision that feels a bit strange to me is how simple the puzzles are. The game basically tells you the solution outright every time. Even Resident Evil 4 Remake had more involved puzzles. As I mentioned earlier, the open level design is interesting, but there are moments where stalker enemies make certain sections feel linear and overly scripted. Once you realize these enemies move in very rigid patterns, there's no fear left. You know that as long as you follow the intended path, you're never really in danger. They're nowhere near as advanced as the Xenomorph in Alien Isolation. Related to this, there's no hard mode available from the start, like in every previous entry. The classic mode is basically the same game but with limited saves, and only when playing as Grace? Leon plays exactly the same. Yes, there is a higher difficulty unlocked after finishing the game, but it's fundamentally different, with items and enemies placed in different locations. For a long time fan of the series, that first playthrough is going to be very easy. I didn't die a single time during Grace's sections, and with Leon, I died a few times, but only once to a boss. A very interesting boss that I won't spoil, but it's genuinely excellent. And after beating it on my second try, I actually reloaded my save just to fight it again. To avoid spoilers, when you get there, you'll know exactly which one I mean because it takes place in a room lit in red. I know I'm being fairly negative, but again, it's a good game, it's fun, and especially if you like Resident Evil 4, you'll definitely want to play Leon's sections, which are excellent and make up roughly half the game. Capcom clearly took feedback from Resident Evil 4 into account in several ways. Weapon spread is generally lower, and fairly early on, Leon can unlock sights that almost completely eliminated spread and remove the mechanic where moving the camera hurts your accuracy. My only real complaint with Leon's mechanics is that turning speed is still too low for such fast-paced gameplay, and that in rare cases, multiple enemies can stagger you back to back, so you really have to plan your encounters carefully. But that's it, I love those sections, and they still maintain a lot of tension, even if Leon is basically John Wick at this point. My conclusion is simple. Yes, I recommend it. I just wish Grace's survival horror sections had the same level of complexity as the classic entries. and that there were a hard difficulty that didn't change the base game so much, so veterans could have a more interesting first playthrough. I'm currently working on a weapon guide for Lean section that I'll be publishing soon. It'll be on screen if it's already made, else you'll see another video recommended by the algorithm. And if you enjoyed this one, you can support me on my Ko-fi page, link in the description. And well, this is YouTube, blah blah blah, you know what to do.